Everybody's all right. We'll go ahead and get started. I'll watch and see as more people come on, and I'll drop the sign in the chat for him, Carol, and I'll watch the chat for you.
All
But
right.
welcome everybody to our final session on the writing revolution. It's been phenomenal, Carol. Looking forward to another great night. You do such an awesome job with this.
Well, tonight is all about, this is the reason we did the other two sessions. All of the strategies and doing it with fidelity in the order she says, the Hockman method says, following it to fidelity so that when we get to this point, what we're going to see tonight, all of those pieces, they have all of those tools. And I know we did note taking very quickly, but note taking will kind of be embedded in what we do tonight. Plus, she does a very good job of explaining it in her book and giving you suggestions. Plus, don't forget, the first night I mentioned to you, there are 3 handouts that are in the participant folder that, it's like teacher tips, teacher activities, teacher list, some support for you in implementing. It's not quite an example, a picture example, but the words say, here's what you could do. So let's go on and get started. And we know that this is our last session. I would like for you to go ahead and open your books to page 84 and 85. And if you don't have it, don't panic, because I just want to use this page to show you how she clarifies and then gives you a picture. And with the single paragraph outline that we're getting ready to do, I think those 2 pages do a great job. And again, just a reminder about the objectives. And I think just through the work we've done with the 10 instructional strategies and adding the note taking at the end, you see how each strategy overlaps and builds to what the objectives are. So today, we're going to start with the single paragraph outline and the paragraph. So we're giving students a specific outline in order to write the paragraph. And you see the definition. That's the very simplistic definition of what a paragraph is. But if you would look at page 84, you're seeing in the middle of the page outlining that works. I would like for you to read the second paragraph, not the first paragraph under that. It starts out with the single paragraph outline, SPO in bold. And we'll take about 1 minute just to read that paragraph. I think she just sums it up, condenses it. This is why I developed this the way I developed it. And if you look on page 85, you have an exhibit 4.1, which is a blank single paragraph outline. And let's kind of look at that. The TS stands for topic sentence. And if you notice, it's a full line. That tells students what they're going to write right there has to be a full sentence. And then we have 4 details, key ideas, whatever we want to call them, that we're going to ask students to do. And you notice they're on dotted lines. That means these are not full sentences. This is where they will use the note-taking skills that they have to make notes and to just get down there what they find in the text that will support what their topic sentence is. And then obviously the last full line is the conclusion sentence. And just take a second while I change slides to glance through and look at Exhibit 4.2. That's a single paragraph outline that has been filled in. Okay, what I have on the screen right now is the bottom half of that light bulb visual that is used to describe the whole Hockman method. And we've already finished the sentence portion of that. Now we're ready to move into let's help kids write. You, first of all, use the single paragraph outline and complete a paragraph. And so that's what we're going to do the first part of the session. The second part of the session will be touching on the multiple paragraph outline and the other things. So you can close your book if it's in your way, because we're going to start looking at information and examples. Now, when you write a paragraph, what you're seeing on the screen, this is the criteria for an effective paragraph: structure, coherence, unity, sentence skills. And as you can see, for if you want to go deeper with it, page 74 in the book will have that. But you know what? When you're looking at that, we're expecting a lot from kids when they write a paragraph, because this puts a lot of burden or a lot of load on working memory. Now, you see that I have the word main idea circled, and I have a very specific reason for that. That when I'm looking at our standards, we don't say main idea anymore. Our standards, and I have gone completely blank here. Can somebody help me out? What do our standards say? Anybody put anything in the chat yet? We don't call it main idea in our standards anymore. Okay, we'll come back.
Central idea. Central idea was dropped in the chat.
Thank you. I knew someone would get it. We don't say main idea. And when I was proofing, was asked to proof and look at things, that upset me at first. I thought, why are we changing terminology? Why do we do this in Kentucky all the time? Well, the reason being is our reading and writing standards are intended to support all content areas. You're not going to find a main idea in science and social studies. The terminology will be different. So we say central idea. Now, if you are teaching literature, it's okay to use main idea, but I can tell you our assessment will not ask students to locate the main idea or to write about the main idea. It's going to say central ideas. So that's an important thing to point out about the difference in terminology that's used, definitely not across the board in states, but our state is central idea. All right, now let's reflect just a moment about, the first session we talked about executive functions and the fact that executive functions are not fully developed in a human until you're in your 20s. So here you are teaching grades 3 through 5, and students must learn to write, but you as the educator know that they don't have all these skills yet. They don't have all these functions. So let's take just a minute. When we ask kids to select a topic, we're really asking them to strategize. When we're asking them to find those details, that evidence, gathering information, We're asking the brain to initiate a series of actions and so forth all the way down the line. So what you're seeing there on the right side, this is what writing tasks require. A complete writing task requires a student, and these are the executive functions that the brain needs in order to do those things. So that's for me, it was a big reason why a lot of our really good students are not good at writing. They don't have the tools. And that's what this whole Hockman method is about. You know, these are cognitively hard skills to learn. And kids also don't have that stamina to focus on a task. And I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say that. So when we get finished with this and we move into revision and editing, this is where we really use those strategies that kids have already learned, sentence strategies, to develop stronger executive functions. So, in other words, there was a method to her madness. First of all, reducing cognitive load. That's what I just discussed when we're talking about plan ahead, organizing, sequencing information, and all the strategies that have been shown to you, especially when we're scaffolding the instruction, we're helping them sequence information. Now, what we'll do tonight, we're going to spend most of our time on number 1 and 3, plan and outline, revise and edit. Now, look at these completed graphic organizers and think about asking a student. Of course, the one on the right is a level 2, the one on the left is a level 1. And ask your students, you've asked them to gather the evidence, to get the details. Now tell them to write it in paragraph form. What's going to happen? Major breakdown, major blank wall. We have come up against those executive functions. They do not know necessarily how to do this. And, graphic organizers are wonderful, and I have always used them. But after I read her book for writing, I'll not use these with students. I would never use these with students again when my expectation is for them to write a paragraph. Now, maybe if I'm wanting them just to learn the content, sure. But these are not linear. Students are expected to write a paragraph in a linear form, so we run up against those executive functions again, and it's harder for students to learn how to write. And I love this little cartoon. It kind of sums it up. It's plotted out. I just have to write it. And here's a chain of notes. And I got to thinking about some of the strategies that we as presenters use. We have you go stick Post-it notes on a big, large Post-it chart, and they have no connections until we talk about them. And sometimes in a training, you never get back to them. So, we've all done it. We've not thought about the fact of how important linear learning, visual learning is for kids. So here is an example of, and the why of the single paragraph outline. I had you do that using pages 84 and 85 also. But it's so important that kids know this, that when it's a solid line, my expectation is it's a complete sentence. When it's broken line, that's for you to get your notes, to get your details. We ask kids to find evidence. We need to also make sure they understand that evidence is facts, evidence is a key detail, and those, using all the words interchangeable. So again, begin with the end in mind. Here's an example of that. And let's take, all right, this student has said that what their topic is about. Bees, the Earth's best pollinators, are at risk of extinction. Now, they used in a positive that they had learned in your previous teaching. All right, now we have all of their notes and ideas that they found to support their topic sentence. And you can notice right here that the note-taking skills are being used. Now, you notice not all of them are. And I want to reiterate in case I forgot to, when we were doing the notes, introduce just one or two note-taking skills at a time. Don't overwhelm students with them, with learning them. They'll think those are more important than finding the details. But they all love to play games. They all like shortcuts, and that's what taking the note symbols help them do. So that said, several species endangered. Look how the student turned it into a sentence. And the kind of sentence they used is a declarative sentence. So we bring them back to this particular slide, brings them back to sentence type. Just write a declarative sentence about what your fact is, and so forth and so on. Now, I want to give you a quick technical tip here. Why is number two, not number two, but why is the big red X? Why is that student's note-taking incorrect? They wrote complete sentences in the broken line. And see, that's what we're trying to help them do. We're trying to help them reduce their cognitive load. Don't do that until the time is right. So the one on the left with the green check, the student has taken notes on the broken lines and also used the note-taking symbols or the note-taking skills. The outline is not meant to be a draft of what they're going to write. And when I think back to writing portfolios, we encourage them to do what the big red X is saying. We encourage them, when they found the fact or the evidence, go ahead and make a short sentence about it. No, if you want to help limit the cognitive load and develop executive functions better, we do it the way on the left. And she talks a lot about that if you want more clarification in that whole chapter. So why teach the paragraph outline? Now that you've seen it, read what you see on the screen, and is there anything that you particularly disagree with of what the single paragraph outline can do? My favorite bullet is the next to the last one, because once they learn this, once they actually become really good at doing a single paragraph outline and completely understand what it does for them, they can replicate it on a piece of paper, which means it can be used for on-demand writing. It's like a short graphic organizer that helps them quickly organize in order to write in a timed situation, which is what on-demand writing is. Now, for you as the teacher, it's much easier to revise an SPO than it is to read a whole draft paragraph and revise it. And she really goes into detail about that on, you can see it starts on page 80, but 80 and 81 has some good information for you as the teacher. You know, this to me, this single paragraph outline gives such a logical order of what their paragraph should look like. And I think a lot of times we fail kids in that area. You know, we don't help them with that. I know I did not, as I thought I was, but when I look at this simple way to do it, I realized that I wasn't. And again, just want to reinforce how much it helps with that reducing that cognitive load. So here are a series of steps to take in introducing and teaching the single paragraph outline. And all of this, again, is found in chapter 4, and it begins on page 83. So look at all of these activities that you are given. These are scaffolding activities to get students to the point that they can use the single paragraph outline. Now, look what's in red there. You know, K through 3 have some special notes. So third grade teachers, make sure you look at that. Now, remember, third grade teachers, you will eventually get to doing what is here, every one of these, but when you're first, use only activities that do not require note-taking symbols and abbreviation. So until your kids learn note-taking symbols later in the year, or when you think they're ready for them, don't create one that requires them, or don't ask them to. And focus mainly on the 2 strategies for teaching for writing topic sentences and concluding sentences. In other words, sentence types and subordinating conjunctions. So now let's have some examples. We're going to go through examples of each one of these. Well, first of all, you have to introduce your topic, audience, and purpose. Those are all expository writing terms, and you can see what pages those can be found on, and she refers to them in chapter 4. And when we're talking about the expository writing terms, remember, our standards do not say expository, they say informational and explanatory writing. Same thing as expository. And these are the terms that are found on assessment. So you do have a handout of them, and they are in the book. So with this one, it's about climate change. The audience is climate change skeptics, and our purpose in creating the SPO and paragraph is we want to explain the effects of global warming on penguins. So here is the suggested sequence for introducing that. We've already done number 1. Number 2 is you providing the topic sentence, or you do it together as a group. You elicit those details, supporting details. You put the details into categories. Then you come up with a topic sentence as a class or independently, depending on the grade level. And as you see, this is called the brainstorming activity to introduce the SPO, and you see page 102 has further clarification for you, because the topic is always given by the teacher when you're teaching this strategy, and the topic, audience, and purpose. And the reason being is you want to limit that cognitive load, want them to learn how to do this. All right. So now we're going to take one all the way through. The topic is winter. The audience is people from warm climates. And our purpose is to describe the unique features of winter. Now, here are some examples. The teacher has the SPO on a screen or chart, however you want to do it. And you have already given students the topic sentence. Now you're using question words, and you want to elicit from your students and have them get to what makes winter a unique season. Now, here's what we were referring to in that first slide about organizing, because kids are going to come up and during the brainstorm, look at all the things that kids came up with in the brainstorm from the text they had read or heard. Now we've got to categorize them. So we decide how we can categorize. This teacher's come up and students came up with 4 categories. Then we take everything they've come up with and put it in a category. And I'm sure most of you have already been doing these type things with kids, because it's such an important task for kids to learn. Categorizing text is a very important skill, because that leads to summarizing, paraphrasing, all the written language structures that we see an author uses. So here we come. The teacher, remember, had winter as a unique season. Now we've come up with all these 4 categories, and students are asked to choose what they think is most important. Now, were they doing this independently, they could have used any, but when you're doing a brainstorm, the teacher is leading. And you have to teach kids that not every detail from the brainstorm has to be in the final product. So what you're seeing here is the teacher has written in red on the left side, the teacher has written, choose something from the weather category, choose something from the clothing. And then together, you and your students come up with a concluding sentence. And, you know, in my experience with writing, probably the concluding sentence was the hardest thing to teach 7th and 8th graders. You would think the topic sentence would be. They just didn't know how. They had such a hard time, and it's because, now I know it's because of that executive function. They had such a hard time writing the concluding sentence because they wanted to include everything they talked about in their paragraph. And it was very hard for them to summarize it. So this is, to me, the SPO helps teach that. Now, another suggested sequence for introducing the SPO is to have students write a narrative. And I know that the examples I have there at the bottom are kind of small and you may not can see them, but kind of look at the words in red. You know, you provide the topic sentence, you ask students to use transition words that they've learned from the transition charts that are up on the wall. And then you're asking probing questions to help students recall the steps in a process. And then you generate a concluding sentence as a class or independently, whichever you're doing. But again, additional information for this. You know, when I had the training, we stopped and did these things. But my training was like for 4 days, and we don't have time to do that in 2 hours. So that's why I really refer you back to the book, or you have my email address if you have get caught up in some of these things and they're confusing for you. You do have built-in follow-up by having the book and also being able to contact me. But what are your thoughts? And you don't have to say them or anything, but I want to give you this question. Why is the one with the big red X not correct? Well, you said use transition words. You did not say to do what the student has done in the second. And so we actually, and we all have this, we all have had kids just give us too much information or not follow the rules. So let's do another one. Another example, but this time it's narrative. Carving a pumpkin. Audience, someone who has carved a pumpkin. The purpose is to explain the process. Now, with narrative, you haven't done that brainstorming activity. With narrative, what you have done is to use the words going down the left side, transition words. What is the first thing you do when you carve a pumpkin? And you're asking students to do that. You're using a very familiar topic or process, but you're asking them to give you key details or evidence using the transition words. And then once that's happened, now remember, you're modeling this for them. Once that happens together, you make a concluding sentence. So what, you know, I keep calling them transition words, but actually you need to use the terminology from the chart. What you've done is give them time and sequence cues, because that's what the charts say. So again, if you run up against something that happens, go to her book, the book you have now. Okay, now here is what we would, this is where we actually were teaching them how to use the SPO, we're introducing it, and now we want to say, here's what our outcome should be, because this is where we're going. We're not just creating topic and concluding sentences and identifying. We've got to turn it into sentences for a paragraph. And you see that on the right side of the paper. You know, the cues support students in converting each one of the details into a well-written sentence, which in turn gives you a well-written paragraph. And she really talks about the fact this is not going to happen overnight. This is a skill. What we're doing right now with SPO, especially with younger students, this is going to take lots of practice. So even though it might not turn out right the first time, don't give up on it. Keep doing it, because eventually those executive functions kick in and they do learn to do it. Now, here are two more examples. I'm going to go through these really quickly because, you know, what you've done here in the first one, you've given sentences from a text they've read or heard, and you're asking, you model, you show them which one, how do we know which one is the topic sentence? So you're identifying what is not a topic sentence and what is. And then the other example, scaffolding example, is about have them put them in order. First of all, we identify the topic sentence, and it's number 1. Excuse me, it's the TS, I'm sorry. And then the topic sentence, they identify it with a TS, and then they put the rest of the details in a sequence order as they should happen. Now you have an example, amusement park. This is where we're giving them the topic sentence, and then you give them a list of details, but some of them are not appropriate. You're wanting them to select, knowing whatever you've read, whatever you've heard, here we go again, and focus on the amusement parks are exciting. Which of those details will explain to a reader why amusement parks are exciting or why they're exhausting? And kids do a really good job of this. And you don't realize when you're doing these simple activities, as you notice, there's just 2 on the page, how it's making working memory and cognitive load and executive functions all come together so that they know what they're doing. The next example is select appropriate details from a text, but it is more difficult. It's using the, this one is a level 2, but it's using the template that you have access to. You know, these activities like this lay the groundwork for students being able to write argumentative essays or reports or opinion at 5th grade. So don't disregard these strategies. Just like the amusement parks, we're really focusing on the details and how to provide the best evidence. And that's what we want them to use in their written response. More examples of how to help students understand how to use the SPO. We're asking them to eliminate irrelevant details. And what this does, I gave you a little bit of time to look at that one for a second. Once they identify the topic sentence, they have to be able to determine which details are and are not relevant. So once they determine the topic sentence, the SD stands for supporting details, which you may want to say that differently based on, I've not seen an on-demand writing prompt in many, many years, so I'm not certain what sometimes they ask for, or even in multiple choice or whatever. So what you're seeing is once the topic sentence is found, which of these sentences have supporting details that match what the topic sentence says the student was going to do in their writing. So that one is a level 1 example. Now, after kids, you've done this, then you can move to having it written in paragraph form to eliminate irrelevant details. And as she says often, very often, one time will not get it. It's going to take several times because remember, writing is the hardest skill that students learn. So we're seeing that after practicing the scaffolding activities, you can move on to giving a paragraph. Now, a teacher created this paragraph that would be most effective for students. And when you're first teaching it, you want the irrelevant details to be obvious. And so when you read this, unless you know the story, you might not know what's relevant or irrelevant. All right, one of the next scaffolding skills, here we come. Again, you give the topic sentence, students write the details, but what do you see happening there? This is a structure that kids won't recognize as compare and contrast until they do it, because this is the structure for either thinking about compare and contrast or for writing compare and contrast. So we have I want two details, write two details about Chester, two details about Tucker, and when we eventually get to the conclusion sentence, we have to combine them about how, see, Chester and Tucker feel differently about New York City. And so in the concluding sentence, you lead the students to it's going to be a compare and contrast, basically. Their concluding sentence will be. Here again, we're giving a topic sentence and asking them to write details, but now we're using terminology that would come from that writing assessment, the language tech, excuse me, I'm so sorry, text structures and what language, written language, they're going to find on any kind of assessment. So right here, we have an on-demand prompt. They have to read, of course it's short, it's not one like it's on our state assessment, but this is a short paragraph. They're asked to find the details. They have to write a topic sentence first. So we've given them a tool that they could have scratched out here, and they need to give evidence and the reason. If you want your students to score well on-demand writing, they can't just state the evidence. And that's what we have done for so long or we've done a really good job, I should say, of helping kids find the evidence, but they don't know how to write about it. So when you use it in this format, okay, you found the evidence, but what's the reason that's evidence? So we move into this. These scaffolded activities are linear and they take students to a higher level each step of the way. So more examples, and this one at the top is so important because what do you see there on the right side? We're reminding students that these are the three ways that they can write a topic sentence and a concluding sentence without giving them the information. We've asked them to use health benefits of water. We've asked them to choose one of the sentence types. Write one using a subordinating conjunction. Write one using an appositive. So see, I mentioned as I was sharing each of these strategies with you, how they come back into teaching kids how to use them in the written paragraphs. So they already know what these are. We're asking them to use them now, and we're teaching them how to use them correctly. And then you have an example there. That one is actually a secondary example. It says the topic is technology, the audience is the school principal, and your purpose is to explain the advantages and disadvantages of technology in the classroom. So we're helping kids learn to take what, those things they found in their SPO and use the strategies that we've taught them to write really good, strong sentences. Again, I'm going to reinforce this does not happen overnight. And I know I'm beating a dead horse to death there, but we have to remember, when I was going through the training, I thought, whoa, this is a lot of different strategies. But then as time progressed and I go back and I'm studying it, and I thought, that's differentiation. We are teaching all these different ways, and it's going to click with, at some point, those students who are very, very, against writing, period, think I'm not a writer. But when it's broken down like this, they become writers. Again, more examples. And what we've added to the one on the right, we've added a transition poster, because we are now moving students slowly into practicing the conclusion. And here we have an example of a student. And again, this is probably a 6th grade example. Evaluate Piggy's character. And the student does it on their own. They decide what category they're going to look for, what they're going to write about, what they're going to put in. And the student, the reason that I share this is because if you notice the student in the notes part, they're not using symbols, but that's okay. They've learned that you don't write a full sentence. They've learned that you need to identify them. And I want physical characteristics. I want personality trait, relationships, motivation. And the student chose them themselves. The teacher did not give them. Now, you don't, what you have to remind kids about, starting right here, especially when we're really talking about categories and things, just because you have 4 details, it does not mean you have to have 4 paragraphs when we move into the MPO. You don't have to do that. So here are answers to frequently asked questions, and I would like for you all to read those. Now, these are all things that I have said in introducing it, but here it is on paper, concisely, and just as a reminder. And bullet number 2, one of the things that the trainer I had, he pounded on number 2. Provide many opportunities for students just to generate SPOs. Don't always have them converted into a paragraph, because these are, the SPO is such a wonderful strategy for teaching just content even. And so that's my trainer really emphasized that. Now, before I move into the next little section, do any of you have questions?
Some things have been dropped in the chat.
Okay,
Carol,
good.
just some conversation about that this single paragraph outline would be great. This would be great for short responses. Yes, it would, even in science and social studies, short responses. And then agreement with you on transitions are hard for kids to do.
Oh, very hard. I think we could teach those every day of the school year, and you're still going to have kids who don't really get it, especially a struggling reader. You know, your other kids are going to get it quickly if you're showing them a piece of text and making the match of transition words and what they're reading. But some students just have a difficult time with it. Thank you all for the feedback. I love to hear from you all that you don't think this is a waste of time, because I have had I've only had one, I will say this, and it was someone who had not had this training. They just saw the book, and I think the book overwhelmed them, and they said, this is a lot of stuff to have to teach. Well, you know, I couldn't say no to that, but they're short and sweet, and they are doable in the classroom. And you all giving me that feedback helps me know that I'm zooming in on, because there is a lot of rhetoric and theory in her book. I will agree with that. And that's why I tell you the pages that are most important. But don't rat me out on that. She wants you to read her whole book, I'm sure. All right, we're going to move into the revision portion and summaries and compositions. And, you know, these are very difficult for kids and need to be explicitly taught. And the composition, the multiple paragraph outline is the planning tool for essays and compositions, and we'll touch on that. And these strategies help get students to be able, again, to write effective introductions and conclusions for compositions. So, Mary, I noticed my time here, and I'm right on track here.
Okay.
So for a break.
So now would be a good time for a break.
No, I'm going to do just a few slides here.
Okay.
You know, I told you. Go ahead.
I was going to also tell you in the chat, Lynn dropped that she's used Able and Atherton for several years, and that this is different. And I was familiar with Able as well. Because I've got a few more years on me, because that's back when Able was going around and doing a lot of trainings. And this is very different. I very much like the structure of this as well.
And you know, I know Able personally, and Able was such I mean, she's an excellent person, an excellent writer, but she's coming from the standpoint before Common Core standards, when we were still doing portfolio writing. And what she's doing to me is, or what their plans, they don't necessarily fit with what the intent of our standards are anymore. Not all of it, but to me, that's because I've done this a long time. You know, I'm finishing up my 40th year. And the reason that I advocate this book so much is because these are simple, straightforward, make sense, teach kids how to write effective sentences first, and teach them how to do it in different ways, and then bring it all together. So, okay, I'm going to hush. Let's go ahead and take a break. Let's do.
Okay.
I got us off track a little bit. Sorry about
That's
that.
All right. Well, do you want to take like a 10-minute break?
Yeah,
it's basically 4:40. So be back at 4:50.
Yes, that'd be great.
Awesome. Also dropped in the chat is feel like this is a more simple approach to getting kids to write. I completely agree with that too.
That is exactly what I thought the minute I saw Because But So. I thought, I gotta find out what else is in this book. Because this makes so much sense and it's so simple.
I'm back.
Me too. I just got back.
Did you just get back? Okay. All righty. I think I might go to the clinic, Carol.
I'm sorry, what?
I think I'm going to go to the clinic.
I think you need to.
Yeah. I think that's
Don't put it off. It's not going to get any better. I got hot and now I got cool again.
Uh-oh.
But it's not going to get, it's only going to get worse. So head it off.
All right. That sounds like good advice. So are we going to end right on time? Because the last time we did this, you went over a little bit,
I did, but I've cut it down.
but we're good.
No,
But
I'm
we are
not
good.
going over. I'm not
All
going
right.
to practice early, but I'm not going over.
Okay. All righty.
You know what? One thing that I did yesterday, because we could have finished early, but I was thinking in my head I had another hour, but we had only have 45 minutes because we took the break. It's like,
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had Tuesday, I had to talk fast there at the end, but it was the perfect topic. The notes, taking notes, things, the perfect topic, because I think that has to be a teacher choice. It's so simple, you know, with the book and the PowerPoint to know what to do. But I think it's a teacher to teach that.
What I love about it is this is just, like Lynn said, it's just a more simple approach. And I like, and this was something that always got me, and how the first topic sentence and the concluding sentence are not identical on
Yeah.
these.
So let's teach kids how to do that.
Yeah.
And having these varied sentence types and all the other strategies helps them. Maybe using a
Right.
positive, you know.
Right. But I
Having all,
remember going through like portfolios and then doing like practice on demand in district. And like the way a lot of them were teaching them is that first sentence and your last sentence are basically, or thank you for reading my paper on this is what a lot of them would say. And I'd be like, oh, no, 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 no.
I don't know whether, you know, I showed some higher level, but the examples, your topic sentence and concluding sentence don't have to be that long.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I think kids have the perception that everything you write has to be long.
Yeah. That's not true.
That's why
either,
they ask you, how many pages, how many paragraphs?
Yeah. Yeah. Another comment in the chat. It is simple, Lynn, and what I think our students need. Yeah, I think it is a very more simplistic, because writing's not easy, and the easier you can make it. And I
You know,
love the template. I love the template for this one.
I am a pure English language arts, writing, reading, literature person. But when I sit down to write, I can't get started. I have my
Yeah.
own way. You know, I mean, our brains all work difficult, you know, different, and writing's difficult for me to get
Yeah.
started. Now, once I get started, I can go
Good to
with
go.
it. So that's why we focus on what you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah.
We're back, aren't we?
Yep. It's 4:50.
Yeah,
Time for us to
yeah.
get back.
Plan and outline, revise and edit. Those are, you know, those 4 steps are not unique to the Hockman method. Lots of, and all of the strategies are not always unique, but The difference is that she has used them in a way that helps us as teachers know how to use them in the classroom. And she even has it in the back of the book of what should be taught at what grade level, what should be focused on. And we have a K2 session coming up, and Mary can talk about that later. But let's go ahead and move on. Let's talk about the difference in editing and revising. They're not the same thing, but I recall kind of putting them together as the portfolio princess in order to save time. And she is very adamant in her, we want to convince kids this is where we make our writing better for the reader. This is where we get to use all these tricks we have in our bag instead of tools in a toolbox. We'll call it with kids, tricks out of our bag of tricks, and she truly advocates explicitly teaching kids how to revise, and that revising is done first. And then we come back with the editing. So you see where the page is for more information on that. And then we have, why should we teach revision? Well, I think you're going to agree with everything that's on that slide, but she is, everything in the Hockman method is to be explicitly taught, not kind of just glossing over it, but because it helps students to develop the clarity to use the strategies. And the number one thing she says too is that the TWR strategies give the teacher and the student the common language. I think about some of the conferences I had with students. You can look in their eyes and know when what you're saying is going way over their head. So if we're all using the same language, that helps. And she, again, you see the page number. Now, the sentence strategies lead to revision techniques. That's what the sentence strategies were all about. We teach kids all the different ways of enhancing sentences, and now they get to use them when they're using the SPO and writing a paragraph. So that's what you're seeing on the screen there. And examples of that is expand your sentence using question words. Both of you, all you have to do is look at the chart or the wall or whatever. Both of you have that common language. I want you to expand this sentence using a question word. I want you to vary some of these sentences. Make sure you might make sure you're using all 4 sentence types, or specifically tell them maybe questions and declarative sentences, of the whole thing. And then you're also going to move them to the higher level and say, you could use a subordinating conjunction to explain this. And you're giving them those tips. Everybody's on the same page. Or even as much as go back to the transition posters, probably, and if you want to get very specific, probably look at time and sequence. In this paragraph, that might fit. It will add more clarity to what you want your reader to know. So again, language. And now here are some revision activities. And we all know about revising topic and concluding sentences, varying vocabulary, but what is unique to the Hockman method is revising unelaborated paragraphs. So you're gonna see that in a minute. And how to give explicit feedback, which I've already kind of given you an example of that just a minute ago. But everything that kids have learned up until now, this is what it's all about. putting it all together to write paragraphs. Now, you can choose whatever grade you want to, but read the topic sentence. What we commonly see throughout the grades, and you're seeing 10th, 6th, 4th, and 3rd there, an example. I laughed when I read them. Maybe I ought to read them out loud because some of that handwriting is a little bit so. The character I chose to write about is Ash somebody. I'm writing about Emily Hayes from the Amulet. I will be writing about Kobe Bryant. So the person that I am writing about is familiar with all those topic sentences? Way too familiar with them, I'm sure. So here's some strategies and scaffolded strategies for revising topic sentences. So we give them a topic sentence and ask them to revise it using one of the strategies we've taught: sentence types, coordinating conjunction, appositive. I mentioned that earlier. Here are examples. And the topic sentence, this paragraph is going to be about Genghis Khan. And then we go asking them to use one of these three. Now, why do we use one? Why are we only saying sentence type, subordinating conjunction, appositive? Remember, they are the big three. They are the sentence strategies that help students write topic and concluding sentences that are more effective and at a higher level. So these are the big three. So now let's look at concluding sentences. And I know all of you, Jerry is an interesting character. This is why Jenny is an interesting character. So you got your topic sentence and you got your concluding sentence, and they both say the same thing. We've all seen that. This is all I know about Blue. I've read many sentences with 7th graders that say, this is all I know, and stop. This one at least said, the character. These are the facts that I gathered. So we asked them to use one of the big three, and we even put up the conclusion transition poster. So we're telling them, here's a possible way to write it, one of these three ways to write your sentence, and here is some language that you can use. Which do you think fits the best? And there are the page numbers for more with this, because I know I'm going through this very quickly. And here's an example of revising concluding sentences. The concluding sentence said, now you know juicing is bad. After you've read that, now you know that. Well, we asked them to do the big three, and now we're adding a fourth. When they're ready to move to it, we give them the conclusion transition poster and ask them to use one of the words to write a sentence. So we're giving them actually 4 ways they can make their concluding sentence. So here is a 5th grade student, the fall of 2021, and here is a student's concluding sentence, same students in the spring of 2022. I like the dad in a quiet place for these reasons. I got to move my thing over here. Esperanza, a wealthy girl, has transformed throughout the story by changing her, I think it's something attitude, personality. So look how far that student came in the way they wrote the topic sentence. Now let's see what happened with them with the concluding. As you can see, this is why I like the dad in A Quiet Place. He did a lot of cool things and moved from, although Esperanza was a terrible model at the beginning, she became an extraordinary person. Now, that's a big change. So just having the tools from the fall to the spring, that's how well that student improved. So now we're going to talk about vocabulary. Are those overused words familiar to most of you? Big time, right? Big time, big time. So we're going to talk about ways to help teach kids to use a rich and varied vocabulary. And so what you're seeing at the bottom, and she talks a lot about it in more detail on page 95, give them a simple sentence such as, we had a fun time. What's another word, a higher level word, you could use that means the same thing as fun? And then same thing as time. And one big point I want to make here, it was harder for kids because these had been typed, students actually did this. It was harder for them to come up with words that are synonyms, and don't use the word synonym because they don't always fit, because day is not a synonym to time, but another word that would mean that, you know, would describe. So we have time, it's harder for them to come up with more words, but look at fun, come up with lots of words. Now, I want to, the reason that this brings in exactly what our standards, and I don't know how many of you, because COVID hit and everybody didn't receive the kind of guidance they needed to use our standards, but every grade band has its own overview. And within the overview is the most important information you need, because it's telling you the expectation for instruction. And one of the things that it's this, what you're seeing in the yellow box, is in every overview, okay, 5, 6, 8, 9, 12. And that teachers should supplement quantitative measures such as Lexile, and we talked about Lexile last session. Teachers should know about and be helping students identify tier 3 and tier vocabulary in context and even their subject knowledge. So all across the board. And that's a whole big training that I do because this is very important. And when we introduced the standards, I took the time to do it. But what you're seeing there on the screen, the tiered vocabulary, our standards advocate tier 2. The expectation is that kids can read tier 2 words and that they can use them in their written responses of any kind, all across the board, every grade level, every subject area, because those are the academic vocabulary appearing frequently across all content areas. You need to understand the tier 2 words, know them real well, in order to figure out what the meaning of the tier 3 words are. And I'm going to give you a quick example. Which of these words would be tier 2? Which would be tier 3, based on what you're seeing the definition? The word speeches and the word democracy. Well, because of time, I'm just going to say it. Speeches is a tier 2 word because it's found across the board in lots of content areas. But you're not going to find the word democracy except in social studies the majority of the time. For kids, anyway. We know it can be used. But that's what we're saying with Tier 2 and Tier 3. And our standards tell us that teachers should use this. So that tells me there's going to be an expectation on assessment that Tier 2 words will be used in questions, and Tier 2 and 3 will be used in questions, and will be expected to be used in written responses. So let's help kids vary. Let's help kids vary. Well, let me go back. I forgot to do one thing. When we're looking down here at vocabulary, what we're seeing in red, and I'm looking at the bottom slide, those are Tier 2 words. What we're seeing in purple are describing words, basically. But the expectation is, instead of saying we had a fun time, we had a fantastic day, would be the expectation for any written words. And anything you do in the classroom, we're wanting to teach them and increase their vocabulary. So we've already experienced two ways, because we talked about vocabulary in one of our other sessions, and now here's another way to teach kids when you're doing revision. And I love all the ideas that came up in my training. It's like with kids, especially, brainstorm a list of adjectives to describe Opal from the book Because of Winn-Dixie. Instead of saying Opal is a nice girl, what could we say? And then you ask them to write a topic sentence about Opal containing an appositive. So we're combining all these strategies for kids. We're not loading, we're not giving them more things on working. Well, we might be doing a little bit with working memory, but all they have to do is pull back from the strategies you taught them. But we are not giving them cognitive load. They know what to do by now. They know how to look for varying vocabulary, and they know how to use them in a sentence with an appositive. Now here is a level considered level 2 for 6th, 7th grade. And I wanted to show it because I know 5th grade teachers, you need to see what the expectation is. And it's brainstorm a list of adjectives to describe Martin Luther King, and look at the language instead of good. Keeping in mind, we want kids to know the meaning of Tier 2 words. And you could even, it may be the vocabulary that you want taught. And then we ask them to do the same thing. Write a topic sentence about Martin Luther King containing an appositive. And they're going to choose one of their words. Now, here are two lists, and when you get the PowerPoint, you can enlarge these and print them, whatever. I've already posted the PowerPoint. But this is something that a 3rd grade teacher, no, I think it was a 4th grade teacher, the first one, came up with. Here, let's teach kids the Tier 2 words. What words can you say instead of like? Or what word could you use in your writing instead of scared? We're teaching them. We're teaching them how. We're scaffolding it. And then there's an example of a chart from language arts and social studies, and words to use in argumentative writing. I think back sometimes, and I think unintentionally, we have hid knowledge from kids. You have to be taught. You don't necessarily these are not always synonyms, but they're words that describe another word. So I like these. I want to share them with you. Gives you some bulletin board ideas here. And these were actually in a high school, but they're taking the words you cannot use when you're writing, and they call it word kill, or trashy words, or vetoed vocab, or humanities profanity. And it's the word that the teacher does, you can't use. You know, we're gonna be smarter than that. We're going to use higher level. We're going to use tier 2. And I thought those were such cute activities there. Looking at my time, I'm doing well. All right, the unelaborated paragraph is another strategy to use. You give them a dull, short sentence paragraph and ask students to make them better using the sentence strategies they've learned. So you can see what happened. We have a positives, we have the because used, we have description, and we have higher level tier 2 words used. And this is the difference. This is the thing that is not a part of most writing. This is unique to the Hockman method, let me say. Teaching kids to take an unelaborated paragraph and elaborate it based on the strategy. So take just a minute and read those 3 bullets. Why should you have students revise unelaborated paragraphs? I agree with all 3 of those statements because that's what they do. And you can go more in depth with it, as you can see on page 114. An unelaborated paragraph, this is the definition. It's a bare bones paragraph, and your goal is revision, not editing. You don't have any spelling or capitalization errors in the paragraph you give. It includes specific, explicit instructions and no more than 4 to 6 sentences. There again, an example. And what the student did, or what the teacher asked the students to do, is to sentence detail number 1, expand it using what or when. Sentence specific supporting detail number 2, expand it using the why. So I know that you all can tell exactly what's going on here. You're using the skills. Kids are going to see these posters on your wall. They're going to look back. They're going to know how to do it already by the time you get to this point. That is the intent. And that's why doing this, the Hockman method with fidelity, that's why it will take your kids so far. Now, here's another one. The 3rd grade went to the aquarium, and the teacher asks the student to expand the topic sentence using the question word when. So here we have the same thing you just looked at, but just in a little bit different format for a younger student. You also have the sheets, the templates to use. And I want to reiterate here, these templates are interactive, which means you get to type in whatever you want to. They're not pre-made. They're you using your things. And here are some examples from some of the partner schools, again, about how teachers have helped kids. I can revise an unelaborated paragraph by using the following strategies. And then we have all these things to help. I love the expand our sentence. Just reminders for kids. You know, the goal is not rewriting the student work when you do this. It's giving them explicit feedback, and that's what these teachers have done. This is explicit feedback, but telling them what strategies might work, because you want to get them to the point where they don't even have to ask you. They don't need that feedback from you. They can do it on their own. Here is the sequence for teaching paragraph revision, and I'm not going to go all over it. We've just done it, but here it is, concise, so when you need to go back to it. So now let's talk about summaries, and especially with our high school teachers, summaries become, let's copy it off the internet. Let's do that kind of thing. So a brief statement that presents main points in a concise form and can be oral or written. And here are the strategies. Well, first of all, the research supporting summarizing. One of the 8 types of instruction having a solid scientific basis for improving reading comprehension is summarization. And these are simple ways to help kids be able to summarize. Why do we teach it? We know all those, but there they are. In the process of teaching summarizing, you're helping teaching kids to learn to paraphrase and also to analyze the information that they want to put into theirs. So here are some examples. First of all, the requisite skills are they have to have background information on whatever you're going to use. They must comprehend the source material. They must be able to underline effectively, not highlight, underline, take notes, and paraphrase. So these are teacher considerations before you move into summarizing. And remember, there's more than one type of summary. You can have a summary sentence. You can have a single paragraph outline. That's what we're doing, is summarizing. And you can have a combined outline that we're going to talk about in just a minute. And all of this is found on pages 142 to 150, and we'll clarify it and, give you more information. But here is, I love this, introducing the summary sentence, because it doesn't matter if it's a kindergartner or a high schooler. They know what this means because they use the computers all the time, and they do computer activities. And if you're looking for a book or a show on TV or what you want to read in a newspaper, we all do that. We read the sentence summary. And I had never really called them sentence summaries, but let's look first of all at the newspaper. You're going to read a headline. That's the same thing as a summary sentence. You're going to look at the headlines, then you're going to look at the subheadings to see if you want to read it. And if you're going to watch a show, especially kids, watching movies on TV, and granted, parents are probably going to read them to the most of the time, your age kids. But do I want to watch the Great British Baking Show or not? I need to find out what it's about. That's what a summary sentence is. Okay, I'm going to the library and I get to choose one of these books. Well, I want to know what each one of them's about. You read the summary sentence or summary sentences, or summary paragraphs too when you're doing that. But you're making a connection to kids. This is what a summary sentence is. This is what we do. The purpose is to captivate and to get you interested. That's what the purpose of it is. So we're now, in order to help teach summarization, we're going back to the kernel sentences activities that I think some of you have already used. I know Patricia told us she used it with her students at Alice Lloyd, but expand the kernel sentences using what and why, or complete the summary sentence. And it's not necessary to use all the question words, just respond to the one that you think are relevant. So see, we're getting into a lot higher level. We have moved them to this higher level. So here's a summary sentence when using an article. And you're seeing very similar format from the SPO. And it's meant to be that way because it's the middle part. First thing they have to do is get some notes to decide what they want to write about in their summary sentence. So it's a very familiar process. So here we go back to the single paragraph outline, reading an article. And this student has used the symbols for note taking, but you only see 1, 2, 3 of them, 4 of them used, and that's okay. The whole point is, after they've read this, this is a longer, we're moving into things, I would foresee something like what you're seeing here, the number of the piece of text, the number of words could definitely be found on an assessment. So let's talk about the combined outline now. We're getting in there. We're putting it all together. We're moving, and I know I'm moving fast. That's why I'm so glad you have the book, because we're getting to the finish line. A combined outline has question words, a summary sentence, which will turn into your topic sentence, and we've already taught students that. And then we have details, the supporting details, and the supporting details have to support the topic sentence. And this is the point where when you give feedback to students, a lot of times you can tell them, you've got some details that don't really support the topic sentence, or I'm not finding enough supporting details that support your topic sentence. And students have two choices. They can go back and redo their topic sentence or summary sentence, interchangeably used terms, or they can go back and say, well, did I really get the right kind of supporting detail? And then we have the concluding sentence. Now, you see the example on the right that you can go back and look at in more detail. The student chose to do a what because the teacher has given them a title. The kids read the article, teacher's given them a title, everything else would be blank. And what? And this is what the student chose to do. Give you about 1 minute to do that. Oops, sorry. Now, that gives you the point of, and when you look at it in the book and you read it, if this is confusing to you, it won't be. You're just getting an introduction to it, and it just all comes together because you are using skills you've already taught kids how to do. And here are some teacher tips for teaching summaries. And again, you have examples there. So now we're going to talk about the multiple paragraph outline and the composition. What is so great about the multiple paragraph outline? It is the single paragraph outline times how many paragraphs you want. The multiple paragraph outline is a structured sequence method that helps students to plan and write an extended composition. Now, I'm not sure how many of you will go there. I would encourage 5th grade because of on-demand writing. I would encourage you to start out with 2, then maybe move to 3. I would not go to 4. And the template lets you decide how many paragraphs you want. But that, you know, those are your choices. And why do we teach it? Well, we show them that everything they've learned in the SPO can be done to write a longer written response when the task says to do that. And then you have all of these things on the page that come from 153 just pulled out for you. But the number one, I love number 3 bullet. It develops organizational skills. And that's probably the number one problem that kids have when writing. They need those organizational skills. We've given them 10 strategies plus all the other things. And logical sequences. We've given them words to use. The who, what, when, where, why, the transition words. And we've given them so many things to help them be able to do this. And here are the prerequisites before that you roll out the MPO with students. Develop a topic sentence that reflects the main idea of a paragraph. So you're going to help kids with that. Write supporting details in note form. They've already learned how to do that. Construct a coherent paragraph. Well, we've taught them to do that. So this is with 3 paragraphs. Now, where it says thesis statement is only required for level 2. So you can take that out when you first start teaching it. If you think you can teach your kids and you want to move on to it, I encourage you to do it, but I encourage you to take it out at first because they're going to go, what? I could see a 3rd grader saying, huh? I know how to write a topic sentence, but what does that mean, thesis statement? So when you're teaching this, they're not quite ready to go there. Here's for you composition terms. And then here is an example with a thesis statement in it. And I'm going to show you in just a minute what is meant by the GST that you are not required to teach, but I want you to know about it because it's in her book. And it may be something that you could use to help if you've got kids that are in college or high school or middle school. You might want to teach them this because it's right there in the book. But here's an example of what it would look like. Now, for the MPO, you can use different text structures. And I'm focusing on argument because beginning at 7th grade, our students have to also include counterclaim. So when we're looking at these different kinds of text structures, more than likely you are going to be looking at similarities and differences. And opinion writing, you're going to be looking at pros and cons. And because these are interactive, you can change the language. You know what the expectation is. You can change the language to meet what you want it to if you move to the multiple paragraph outline. And again, here are some examples. Here was the teacher's anticipated response for this one. It's just showing you. And this one was actually done by a student, the one on the left. Again, samples. But this one, we took the single paragraph outline and turned it into multiple paragraph outlines. Because if we're only writing one paragraph, we're not going as deep with each of our details. But you could use the details and expand and write a full paragraph. So that's an example for you. And this one is an example of one completed by a student. I just wanted you to have all of these. And here's what happened. Here was the outline. Here's what the student wrote. Here's what the teacher found. Evidence of when they were reading it. Now, MPO reminders. Take with a grain of salt the thesis statement. And again, I'm really only talking to fifth grade teachers when I'm saying you may want to do two paragraphs, because K4, well, actually K5, she says, is not held accountable for moving into that. But you know, as fifth grade teachers, what the expectation is on on-demand writing. So I've thrown a whole lot at you in a short amount of time. I still have just a little bit more, but we will be done before you know it. Here is the when you're talking about an introductory paragraph, it sets forth the whole topic of a composition, not what we talked about earlier for K4. Now, fifth grade, the reason I leave this in is for you to make the decision whether you want to use it. And here you see a level 1 example and a level 2, no, excuse me. Here was what the student did first. And after having training, here is what the example 2 looked like. Now, the level 2 MPO requires students to generate a thesis statement, which they'll use as the last sentence of their introductory paragraph, which that is not a requirement, again, unless you want to take students that far. And there are the page numbers it's found on, but I wanted to show you what we were talking about. Pages 168 to 170 talks about the GST. What it is, it's helping kids be able to write a paragraph that contains a thesis statement. There's the recommendation of a book. You see 2 little examples, but here it is very simplified for you. You give the students a paragraph, and then you have them decide which sentence is the general, which is the, and I went blank, which is the specific statement, and which is the thesis statement. So this is one way, even with middle and high school students, this is the way to teach kids how to get to being able to write a thesis statement. And if you were face to face with me, I would say, what do you think about this? Do you think kids need this? And I would hope your answer would be absolutely. Kids really, high school kids struggle with thesis statement. So we're closing now, and let's do a little student progress. Do you remember this little lady's paper from our first night? I got to. She's a second grader. This was in September. Here's what she did in January. Now, don't try to read all that. I just wanted you to see how messy it is, because she did an SPO using the topic sentence, which I cannot read even on my copy, so don't, all I can read are her big letters on this version of it. Here's what she did. She turned her SPO into a paragraph. And the arrows are what the teacher found in January. Now remember, from September to January, that's how far she came. I don't see, I got to. And here it is typed. Here's what she did in September, and here's how far she came by January. That is a second grader whose teacher focused on the Hockman method for those months. And remember, those 10 sentence strategies need to be introduced in that order. And once they are, you can mix and match and do them. They don't have to, students don't have to master sentence and fragments before you move to the next step, the next strategy. Just teach them in that order. So these are just activity reminders, which I've gone over those and embedded those in the whole training. Here's what I want to give you before we say good night. There are free resources. If you use this exact, I gave you the website to register for free, and you can get access to lots of things. But if you want to go straight to the resources, that's the website. There is an online school resource that has additional resources for you, examples from other teachers, but you have to pay to be a member of that. So you get gobs on the free, but you can find out more about the other. And that concludes us. And boy, I really feel like Charlie Brown's teacher tonight, because I have flown. But the main reason I do is because, just like your students will do, this comes together for you. As you look at single paragraph outline and multiple paragraph outline, you think, oh, yeah, that's where this fits. So thank you all very much, and I hope you have a great evening.
I just dropped in the chat your feedback survey for you all to be able to fill in, and it should email you a certificate. There was a comment Danielle had put in the chat, and I think this is back when you were talking about the tiered vocabulary, that she loved that. And it was one that she didn't remember from the Writing Revolution sessions she had attended before. So you had added that in?
There wasn't enough time, but I do trainings with that and several other things that are included in just that one page on the overview.
That's awesome.
If enough people wanted, I could do that in like an hour and a half if we wanted to offer some trainings.
Like on the tiered vocabulary?
Yes, I have yet to do a tiered vocabulary training that at least one person didn't say, I love this. I needed to know this. And during that, I also teach you how to determine your tiered vocabulary within your content areas, ways to do that. but it's a powerful training. And when I did the introduction, I just didn't have time to get everything in. And that's why we've come back and doing these trainings.
Yeah, and a fabulous job as always, Carol. Wonderful. Thank you so much. So unless you all have questions, as soon as you complete the feedback survey, keep in mind it will be coming from kvec.training at the holler. Go ahead, Carol. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to remind them to tell their K2 teachers next month. Mary will be sending out that, but we're going to do the same learning series, 3 sessions for just K2. And they don't, this one, it does not go as far in depth for them like you all. And in fact, I added the little more to yours than just because I wanted 5th grade teachers to know that information.
I'm going to put on in the chat, Carol, I'm so glad you said that. Thank you. I'm going to put in the chat the KVEC professional learning calendar, and it is on there. The K2, it starts on March the 18th. So if you have people in your district that you want to make sure they're aware of that, just share this link, and all you have to do is click on the training you want to sign up for, and the registration link is there. And so it does follow the same format. It's still 3 2-hour sessions after school, same time, 3:45 to 5:45. So please share that out. We also have some other things coming up that you probably will be really interested in looking at that PL calendar.
And this is the second time we've done the 3-5. We did it early in the fall, and I wanted to do it again because I know about on-demand writing and how once I got feedback from them, how they love that to help kids with on-demand writing. And so Mary and I discussed it, and so that's why this is the second time. But we had several participants who attended the 3-5 that also wanted to attend the 6-12 because they do multiple grades. And that some of you may be that way. You may teach a combined class of 2-3, or you may be a special education teacher. You can attend as many sessions, grade. I just break it into grade bands.
Yeah, you do a fabulous job for it. Daniel put in, my K2 will be doing this as well. I think that's fabulous because if you start this in kindergarten and you think of if each teacher just builds on it each year, what a structured writing curriculum you're going to have.
Yeah, and I had the 3-12 training with the Writing Revolution Company, and I thought, how can you do this with K2? I mean, where do they stop? I was so impressed. But with the K2 training, I'm thinking, well, I could even be a kindergarten teacher now and teach writing. Because they just do a fabulous job.
It's awesome stuff. It really is.
It is. And if you go take the training yourself, or if say, oh, I want my school to have it through the Writing Revolution, it's $1,000 a person. I am so blessed with Mary and Brana, who had the funds to send me.
And so we're able to let you provide it.
Yes.
Which is awesome.
Now I'm earning my training.
Yeah. That's right. Soon as you all finish up, you are free to go